Hello and welcome to Man, Woman, God. I'm Nikki Cauchi, your host, and with me I have someone very special, my husband, Greg Cauchi. Greg, welcome.
Thank you, Nikki.
Now, it's great to have you on the show.
As if we don't see enough of each other at home.
So, Greg, we have received a few letters and emails, and I wanted to read one of them because it's really struck me about this testimony that Lara from Springvale.
Lara from Springvale?
Yes.
Let's see what she's got to say.
Exactly. She's written this. My boyfriend and I were at a pub playing free poker. We were shocked when the cool, friendly guy we had met explained that he was a pastor. A priest, I exclaimed. I had come from a Catholic upbringing and knew only of priests and their roles in the church. My boyfriend and I were unsure at first when this pastor invited us to come to church. Now I look back and am so amazed that God reconnected with me. He found me in a pub of all places. I now attend church every week and love it. I am serving, loving my church family I have found, and recently, after 2 years, I've been baptised as a born-again Christian. God works in mysterious ways. Indeed he does. And Greg, meeting God in a pub.
Absolutely. Nikki, it doesn't surprise me, not in the least.
But before we move on, Greg, I just want to say, because it really struck me that God was there at this pub, because in Psalm 139, I just want to read this little bit from Psalm 139. It's verse 7 and 8, and it says, "Where can I go from your spirit? Where can I flee from your presence? If I go up to the heavens, you are there. If I make my bed in the depths, you are there." So basically, there's nowhere that you could go that God is not there, and He can't.
Absolutely.
And He can find you wherever you are.
He'll find you and He will pursue you. And really, it's up to you to accept or reject that invitation.
Greg, I just want to talk about your testimony, because it's very similar to Lara, because you were brought up in a Catholic home as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And just before I go to the testimony, I'd just like to say, it really doesn't surprise me at all that Lara found God, or, a priest who represents God in a pub, playing poker of all things. It's when I became a Christian, my whole life changed, and most people think religion is boring, but I have to say it's the most exciting thing that's ever happened to me. And becoming a Christian, you can be consumed by the church and, find a new family in the church and never be short of someone to see or something to do.
But that Catholic upbringing that you had was an avenue for where God could reach out to you.
Yes,
Isn't that true?
I was brought up a Catholic. In a Catholic family, we had to go to church. I didn't really understand much about Catholicism. Any questions I did have weren't really answered, but I went through the ritual of, attending church and being a Catholic, doing good and praying every now and then. Until I was living in Chadstone. I was single at that time before I met you. And I met a girl had moved into a couple of houses down from where I was living. And it just so happened we met on the street one day. I came home, she came home. And we chatted, and she knew somebody that I knew really well. And so we had a bit of a connection. And every now and then we'd stop and talk. And I discovered that she was a Christian, and I really interrogated her about that. And basically, we talked quite often about Christianity. And I wasn't really moved, but I was interested. And she finally invited me to do an Alpha course, which I did. And I loved it. I loved every session. It was exciting. It was great. You'd meet once a week for about 14, 15 weeks, something like that. And you'd have dinner, which I loved. And you'd watch a video, and then you'd discuss the video. And it would be on a specific topic like, who was Jesus? Why did He die on the cross? What's the Bible all about? Who wrote the Bible? So on and so forth. And it was just very interesting and very fulfilling as well. And basically towards the end of the course, you go away for a weekend, the group does. We went to Phillip Island and spent a couple of nights there. And the topic for that weekend was the Holy Spirit. And so on the first day we were praying, we came together to pray. And I'd never prayed like that before. laying hands on somebody and on a chair, and we're all standing around her, and we started to pray, and I'm thinking, I should just speak to God. I didn't really know how to pray. And I had my hand on her, and I just felt myself almost sliding away from her and like physically moving away from her. And I thought, that's not what I want to do. I don't want to move away from this. I want to move towards it. So then I found myself sliding back in, and I started then to put a lot of pressure on her shoulder, so much so that she was looking up at me and sort of pushing herself down into the chair. And it kept, I couldn't help this. I was just kept pushing down and down and down until I was just bowled over. And she almost came with me, but that didn't happen. I just was flat on the floor. And everyone started to cheer and carry on, and I thought, what's happened to me? What just happened? I thought, this is very unusual. I'd never experienced anything like this. So then I got up, and I was kneeling on one knee, and I lay another hand on her shoulder. And again, it was like as if I just, with force, pushed you over like this, with full force. And I was bowled over, and that happened 2 or 3 times. And Nikki, when that happens to you, you can't deny that happened to you. People can tell you that it was your imagination, or it was this or that, or you were on some fault line, or there was some energy, or there was thunderstorms or something, Yes, I'm sure you can come up with 1,000 explanations, but I know that was the power of God's hand. And from that day, I devoted myself to God. I became a Christian. And my life's never been the same since.
Well, of course it hasn't, because then you married me.
I married you. I met and married you. And so it's never been better.
That's fantastic. Yeah. So, Greg, we want to hear stories from people out there.
Absolutely.
Just, send us any type of stories that you want for us to read out on air. There could be your testimony, things that have happened to you. If you want prayer, we are here to pray for you, to support you, to see what God has for you. So we really encourage emails.
Yep, emails to manwomangod.org. Mm-hmm. That's manwomangod.org. O-R-G.
Fantastic.
We've got a website up and running. It's not really, it's not a full site as yet, but it's certainly there. And you can make contact with us. And the viewers just need to email us or give us a call. And we'll certainly read their letters and attend to their requests.
Fantastic. Yeah. Well, thanks for being with me for
Absolutely.
This part of the show. And so we're going to go for a break. We're going to come back with our resident pastor, James Layton.
Hi, I'm James Layton, and I'm the pastor from Encore Church in Hawthorne. Last time I was on the show, I presented the idea that what if God was more like a loving father than a harsh judge? And then when God chose to, by his will, adopt us as sons and daughters, he brought us out of an earthly concept, an earthly household of where we love justice and we operate under justice, into a heavenly, a kingdom household where the governance is more around mercy than justice. And I presented the idea that you kind of got to choose. You can't have mercy and offer justice. We've got to be people that if we receive mercy, we have to offer mercy. And that presents some challenges. As a person, I've really struggled to offer people mercy from time to time. I've had to do a lot of work in my heart over the years, almost sometimes person by person, and offer that person mercy and forgiveness. So I'm going to show you a little bit how to do that today. And because I really believe that it comes a point in your walk and in your relationship with God that you can hit a wall. And I hit this wall in my own life. I was working in a school as a chaplain. I was running a youth ministry. I wanted to plant a church. I loved God. I'd left my life of business to serve God and to serve the kingdom. I loved God. I loved preaching. I loved people coming to know God. I felt alive when I talked about God. And I sat down in a coffee shop one day with a good friend. I said, you know what? I know all about God, but I don't know if I know God. There's something not quite right. There's something missing. And we went on a journey together, and I understood what that was. There was a level of intimacy that was missing with God. I'd hit a wall, and to get through that wall, God had to lead me to how I felt about some people, and I had to forgive some people because I really realised that my connection with God, there's a vertical and a horizontal thing going on. My connection with God somehow has to do with my connection with you. They're connected. We can't have a great relationship with God and a horrible relationship with each other because it just doesn't work that way. I'll tell you, I'll read you a story from the Bible that might help you understand it a bit better. Jesus is walking along with his disciples one day and he sees a fig tree and there's no fruit in it. So Jesus curses the tree, goes, you're not bearing fruit. And that was that, and they walked on. And the next day, they walked past the tree. It's really interesting because this sounds like I'm getting a faith lesson, but there's something else in this. Have a listen. In the morning, as they went along, they saw the fig tree withered from the roots. Peter's my favourite disciple because he's always got something to say. Peter remembered and said to Jesus, Rabbi, look, the fig tree you cursed has withered. Have faith in God, Jesus answered. I tell you the truth. If anyone says to this mountain, go throw yourself into the sea and does not doubt in his heart and believes that what he says will happen, it will be done for him. Therefore I tell you, whatever you ask for in prayer, believe that you have received it and it will be yours. We'd love that kind of faith, wouldn't we? Where we could just tell a mountain to go into the sea. See, I think a lot of us want to have this incredible faith where we can operate like Jesus and curse a fig tree and do incredible stuff. But Jesus almost randomly just adds something in the next line. Because just after he says, therefore I tell you, whatever you ask for in prayer, believe that you have received it and it will be yours. And when you stand praying, if you hold anything against anyone, forgive him so that your Father in heaven may forgive your sins. That's random. Jesus is giving his disciples a lesson in faith because they were amazed that he could make a fig tree wither. And Jesus says, yeah, this is how you do it. Believe in your heart. But when you pray, if you hold anything against anyone, forgive them because it's a roadblock for you. What Jesus is saying is he's saying faith, if faith is the vertical and forgiveness is the horizontal, these two things are connected. And we can't have, this is not like justice or mercy where you have to choose one. It's not an either or. This is a both and. If you want to have faith, you have to have forgiveness. And that was the roadblock I hit. And I really believe that since I've worked through some of the things, some of my issues with people, and forgiven people, I have come to a whole new level of intimacy with God. And it didn't come from learning more about God. My horizontal opened up the way for the vertical. I want to give you a couple of tools, if I can, how I did this. There's a few steps you can do to ask. Number one is ask God, who do you want me to forgive? And literally in 10 seconds, often you'll get a picture of that person, the person that you most need to forgive. Ask God who you need to forgive. The first thing you've got to do in the process of forgiveness, and you're not going to do this overnight with everybody you know, it's taken me years and I'm still on the journey, is the first step is you've got to relinquish the right to justice in that person's. No more fantasizing about getting your own back. Let it go. You are giving God the right for justice and you are relinquishing your right for justice. That's one of the steps. The next one is cancel the IOU. We have so many IOUs with people. We've got to cancel them. You've got to literally tear up the IOU and say, that person does not owe me anything anymore. Their debt is cancelled. Yeah, does that help? Another one is end the judgments. Look at what you've judged them for. I've judged this person because they did this, this, and this. You have to end those judgments. And the last one is, there's two more. Give them a gift that they don't deserve, your mercy. You were given a gift that you didn't deserve by your Heavenly Father. Give that to someone else. And the last one is speak a blessing over that person. Jesus said, love those who curse you, bless those who curse you. And sometimes the greatest breakthrough is to pray a blessing over the very people that have wounded you the most and hurt you the most. You pray favour and goodness over their life. You release them. And I speak from someone as an example. I have come to a whole new level of intimacy with God since I've started doing that. I've found new levels of freedom with people, and I've got safe relationships now where I'm not afraid of what you'll do with what you know about me. I can be vulnerable, and I think I'm starting to learn what love is. So give it a go.
Hello everyone, my name's Rowen D'Souza from Rowen D'Souza Chiropractic. I'm here today to talk about the book Sweet Poison. It's written by David Gillespie, and it's a way in which we can look at the sugar in our diet and how, unfortunately, it is making us fat. When you look at the statistics that the ABS, the Australian Bureau of Statistics, have just released, it shows that there's been an increase in obesity in Australia in the last 10 years by 5%. Now, this is worrying, considering we spend billions of dollars on dietary interventions and reducing the amount of fat in our diets. Clearly, other things are going on. Now, in the book, it's very, very interesting. It gives a lot of good research, and it gives a lot of good tips on how to reduce sugar and why we should be reducing sugar as well. When I was reading the book, the thing that really struck me, the thing that made me realise that maybe we won't be able to beat obesity, was the passage in the book. It's very early on, I think it's something like page 14, where David gives the research that in 1970, when Special K was first introduced in the shops, the recipe called for about 7% of sugar. Today, unfortunately, the recipe now calls for 14% sugar. So what that means, over the years, there's been a steady increase in the amount of sugar in our diets. The reason this is because, and I'm not trying to be negative about food manufacturers, but the reason that is clearly because we have a natural predisposition to sweeter foods. Our ancestors, when they found sweet foods, they gorged on them because they were only available for a short period of time. Our brain is hardwired to seek out sugary foods. So when sugar is increased in our foods, we buy more, we eat more, and it's a way that people can sell more food. Unfortunately, we have also seen a corresponding rise of obesity. So clearly, we need to change the way in which we see food, and we need to change the way permanently. And this is what's good about the book Sweet Poison, is it looks at a lifestyle change. It's not just a diet, it's not just a challenge. Last time I talked about Daniel's diet, which was a 10-day detox, and it was a good way to start things off. What I think would be better is a 2-week, a 15-day sugar-free challenge. And this is something that David talks about in the book, about breaking the addiction of sugar. So it's very interesting because he's not content with just reducing the amount of sugar in our diet or substitutes such as artificial sweeteners. He really labours the point that we actually need to break the addiction. Just like addiction to any other substance, cocaine, marijuana, all of these things make us want the substance more. Sugar is no different, and in many studies, in fact, sugar has been shown to be more addictive, possibly because it has that nutritional effect as well. So what we have to do is we have to really take a good look at our food. Now, when I read this book, it inspired me to go off sugar, and that was 15 weeks ago. I went through some very severe very severe withdrawal symptoms. At times, I actually had the shakes. And I like to think of myself as a healthy person. Being a healthcare practitioner, I like to look after my diet. But I had to be honest with myself, and I had to admit that there was a lot of hidden sugar in my diet. In the sauces we have, in relishes, even in things like meat. Preserved meat has sugar in it as well. Sugar is also hidden in our diet. It's called by different things: concentrated fruit juice, maltose, a various number of things that actually contain sugar that actually leave us addicted. In fact, if you look at any one packet of a processed food, quite often there'll be more than one source of sugar. There'll be 5 or 6, all called different things. In the book Sweet Poison, what they talk about is ways of identifying this, and this is a very good first step in reducing the amount of sugar that you have. Now, what I found coming off sugar was one things started to taste sweeter after a certain period of time. So things that normally don't taste sweet, well, didn't taste sweet to me when I was addicted. Things like sparkling mineral water have a really nice sweetness, and in fact it's very good because they can form a substitute for drinking soft drinks, which I didn't have a lot of, but even those ones were enough to give us a good dose of sugar. Now, the ABS tells us that each person in this country has about 20 teaspoons of sugar a day on average. And that's quite a lot. You know, that's just processed sugar. That's quite a lot. And certainly that's something that's leading to this epidemic of obesity. One of the sad things that we have to acknowledge with that I have to acknowledge with my patients is that obesity is a killer. And it's a big killer in our society. Obesity is not just when you're overweight or morbidly obese. It's also that process of gaining fat which we do over the years. It's that process where we accept 5 kilos overweight, 10 kilos overweight. It's a slow creep. What's very, very sad is when you look at the statistics of a percentage of people overweight. At around the age of 65, the percentage of people who are overweight starts to decline. That's not because people over 65 are losing weight. That's because at age 65, there is an increase in morbidity and mortality of the people who are obese. So the people who have weight issues have shorter lives. The average Australian lives to about 85. What happens after about 65 is that people who have excess weight start to experience life-threatening problems. And we have to be very, very clear and very, very honest if we are going to reduce weight. It's not easy. I've struggled in the last 15 weeks with this, but at the same time, it has had some very interesting and some very amazing effects on my body. I don't feel bloated anymore. In fact, I didn't even realise that I did feel bloated. And in the book, David talks about many, many case studies of people who had similar sort of experiences as well. It's a great book, and it's a great way to get us thinking again, get us thinking about our food. In fact, I think one of the main things it does is it changes our relationship with food, which we clearly need. We eat food to comfort. We eat food when we're stressed. So we need to look at weight gain and obesity not as a dietary problem. We actually need to look at it as an emotional problem as well. You know, we turn to food for comfort. We turn to food to make us feel better. But whenever we have an addiction, it's not good for our body, and certainly the rates of obesity and the diseases that come with it, and the morbidity and the mortality as well, are testament to that. It's also not good for our spiritual lives. It's not good for how we relate with others. So Daniel's diet, which we covered last time, and Sweet Poison, which we reviewed today, are really great ways in which we can look at our relationship with food and look to change our relationship with food as well. So, if you have any questions, email us at manwomangod.org and I'll be happy to answer them. Till next time, bye.
Well, that's all we have for today on Man, Woman, God. Thank you so much for joining us, and God bless you. We'll see you next week. Bye-bye.